something, I want to do it well and create massive amount of success for the time, the energy, the money that I'm investing. And that's why I'm super excited today to be joined by Steve Tannuzzo, as he's going to talk to us a little bit about how to harness the power of SWOT analysis to create chapter success. Greetings, Steve.
Hello. I'm happy to be here for the first time.
Yeah, super excited to have you here with us. I feel like I was just talking to you.
Because you were.
Technically it was Friday, so it wasn't that long ago.
Yep.
And I was talking to Steve because he hosts the BNI Talks, which happen in the BNI core region in the United States every Friday at noon Eastern. Steve is a global support team member as a global communications coordinator. He talks better than I do sometimes. And so he works with chapters all across the globe, anywhere in the world. 21 years involved in the organization. In addition, he's the owner of Tannuzzo Creative, specializing in copywriting and organic SEO. He's been in business for 14 years and loves helping business owners get found and get customers from their website, Google Business Profile, and LinkedIn. He lives in Massachusetts, love reading and watching baseball. He has 2 rescue dogs, and something that not everybody knows about him, he won an adult spelling bee.
I did.
What was that all about? I guess I've seen some teams do that before.
So I had a big chip on my shoulder from losing a childhood spelling bee way back in the day. And I found out that there was a charity adult spelling bee that was happening, and it was sponsored by the venue that we were using for our BNI chapter meeting. And they said, if you could, get a team together and come on the spelling bee. And I was like, it's time for redemption. And so we got our team together, and I was ready to go, and we made it all the way to the end. And in the final round, we eked out a win. It was great.
That's awesome. Do you remember the word that you won on?
I believe it was replication.
Okay. All right.
Not a really difficult word, but you could kind of sound it out, but someone screwed it up somehow. I think they spelled it with an O instead of an E or something.
The English language can be tricky.
That's the fun of it. That's why people hire me.
Yes. Now, before we get into today's conversation, I do want to let y'all know that are watching us live. Please share your questions and thoughts in the comment section. And just FYI, sometimes Restream plays well with Facebook and LinkedIn and sometimes not. So if you could include your name in the comment, just in case it doesn't show up here, then we know who we're talking to instead of just Facebook user. So we would love to interact and hear what y'all have going on. So Steve, I'm thinking, this harnessing the power of a SWOT analysis. Maybe before we talk about how to harness the power, we should talk about what is a SWOT analysis, because some people may be familiar with it, some not. So let's start there. What is a SWOT analysis?
So a SWOT analysis is usually something that people do for their businesses, but of course we treat our BNI chapters like a business, so it applies here. And so SWOT is an acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And those are the 4 quadrants of what are going to make up your plan to really look at your chapter and how it's working and what's great about it, what's not so great about it. And those are kind of internal things. And there are also the external things. That's the O and the T, the opportunities and the threats, and the ways that you can use a SWOT analysis to kind of get out of the week to week. We tend to look at BNI from week to week, right? It's just kind of, we're in the moment, and this is kind of the view from 10,000 feet, and to say, all right, let's really take a good look at our chapter and see what are the things that we can do to be even better and to eliminate the weaknesses and see what's out there that we can bring in and make things better.
Gotcha. And if people are doing that, how do they usually go through and do the SWOT analysis?
Well, I think you have to, first off, you have to figure out who's going to be in on the conversation. Do you want the whole chapter involved? If you've got a very large chapter, this might be a very long meeting. If you've got a smaller chapter, it works a little bit better. The one thing I would advise against, because you can do a SWOT analysis with just 2 or 3 people, but if you do, and let's say it's the leadership team and the president and the vice president, secretary, treasurer are kind of in lockstep, and they've got a similar mind, which can be very powerful. for a group. But at the same time, a little bit of diversity, some new, fresh ideas is always a great thing. So I would very carefully choose the people who you think are going to give you, first off, honest feedback, and also maybe people who think a little bit outside the box, to make sure that you have an opportunity to bring in the best people to figure out, all right, how are we going to take a look at this chapter, identify what's going on with it, and then set a plan to make it really great.
And I love that, let's get the leader, let's get representative of the chapter. Sometimes I talk to chapters and they're like, we want to keep our same three, that have been here for 10 years in the leadership. And I'm like, oh, I mean, if it's the same thing for a decade, so, a combination of old and new, younger and older, seasoned, different cultures, different diversities. I love the idea of being representative.
And that's what makes chapters great, is that they are diverse in all those aspects. There are some chapters that I get it. Everything is working fine and they're just going to lock in and this is going to be how it is. But that kind of mentality, I think, really stifles a chapter over time, and it can get a little bit stale, even though, your chapter may look great on paper. You've got lots of members and everything's going well, but is it really set up to succeed, 10 years from now?
Yeah, and I think that BNI,
or 1 year from now, for that matter.
Oh, yeah. I think that BNI core value of tradition plus innovation is so huge. Yes, it's always worked, but just because it always worked, I mean, the horse and carriage worked, but we came up with a car. The car worked and a boat worked, but we came up with an airplane. So just because it's always worked doesn't mean that there's not opportunity for more and better. So I love that core value of traditions and innovations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like when you get a phone upgrade, right? No one wants you don't want the first iPhone 1.0. That thing, wouldn't work today. So everything gets a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit smoother. And that's how you succeed over time, is little incremental changes along the way.
I'm laughing because I just upgraded this weekend. I finally made the decision to upgrade from my iPhone 8, which I'm now using as a timer. I know, to a 13. I was like, okay, do I do the 14 or the 15? And I was asking my aunt, she's like, what do you have? I'm like, an 8. I have a 13 if you want it. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go there. Cause I
just happen to have a phone on her.
She did. She's like, I figured one of the kids might need it or something. And I'm like, well, if you've got one laying around, I'll use that till I make the decision which one to get. However, I already know that I needed more and better. So we're kind of on a tangent here, but maybe one of the opportunities for some of your chapters is, are you stuck? And just because my phone has worked for me forever, like now the battery was running slow and the apps were running slow. And seriously, the 8 only had one camera and I take dozens of pictures a day. So it's like time to upgrade. So maybe leadership teams, some of you need to hear, maybe this is going to be good to get your chapter out of that rut. All right. So we talked a little bit about iPhones and SWOT analysis. Let's talk about, how do we harness the power of them? How do we use them?
Okay. So you're going to gather your people and you're going to set the plan, which is to really look at your chapter. And by the way, you can download pretty much anywhere a little SWOT template. Free SWOT template download, something like that. Google that, and I'm sure you'll come up with something that you can use for your meeting. And what's really great about this for your chapter is putting everything together, everybody in the room, and being really honest and asking questions that push a little bit. So, for example, I could say, what's great about your chapter? And someone might say, well, we've got 50 members. All right, that is great. A 50-member chapter is a solid, strong network.
Yeah.
Right? But what else is great about your chapter? And this is where you have to start looking at things. So you might say, we have a really big real estate and trades contact sphere. And we've got the best visitor hosts that do an amazing job, right? But in those conversations, you might start looking at weaknesses. So, for example, you might have that really strong real estate trades contact sphere, but you might have a very weak health and wellness sphere or marketing sphere, right? Those are the two that tend to struggle the most in getting people. It's a lot, you kind of yell out the window for financial and insurance people, and there they are.
Right.
But it's a little bit different. And so it can be a weakness, especially you notice this, or maybe you don't notice this in a larger chapter, but you do in a smaller one. Well, we need people in our contact sphere. So taking a look at that and putting that in your weaknesses and being honest about that is important. You might have a big attendance problem, right?
Yeah.
So the chapter may be doing pretty well, but no one's getting substitutes. So the meeting feels a little bit flatter when not as many people attend, especially during the summer. Things like that. You have to look at all of those things and say to yourself, how can we do better, right? So those are that's strengths and weaknesses, and that's all internal things that you can have an immediate effect on. What are the things that we can change right now to make things better? And then the O and the T are opportunities and threats, and those are external.
Okay.
So for example,
now, before we get into the other ones, because I love these ideas, and we say we want to work on them.
Sure.
What are different ways and resources that we might be able to work on them? Let's start with the internal, and then we'll let you
sure. Okay.
External. So,
yeah,
where can we get help should we need it with some of those things? We're having bad summer attendance. How do we bring that up? Where are some resources for us?
Yeah, so there's a few. First off, you should have a good open communication with your director or chapter success coach, and they can come in and speak on all of these topics and give you good direction. The other things you can do are look at our BNI Business Builder website, which has tons of training and forms and things like that. There's, of course, our wonderful BNI Talks webinars, which you can visit on our BNI Team USA YouTube channel. And other places that you can go are, well, I would say for something like maybe you want to do a BNI game. If everyone knows what the BNI game is, kind of break out the chapter into sections and things like that. We're putting up a brand new blog, I think this weekend.
Nice.
On BNI.com, all about the BNI game and how it works and how. So there's resources all over the place. Dr. Meisner's podcasts, which you'll probably hear Tiffanie on because she's been on 400 of them, and of course Dr. Meisner's blog. I don't know if you've ever been to ivanmeisner.com. So much great information there, and one thing that's very close to my heart since I send it out every week. SuccessNet. If you're not subscribed to SuccessNet, you should. It's a really great resource. And we're really focusing in on member content that's going to help their business and their membership.
Awesome. So there are so many amazing resources at our fingertips. I remember, so Steve, when you got into BNI, what kind of resources did you have 21 years ago?
Well, I had my director. Great.
Was business by referral out by then?
I don't even know if it was there at the time. It was way back in the day. No, that was a 90s book, I think. So yes.
I remember the BNI orientation CD, and like they had Dr. Meisner, I think, had like 3 books at the time when I got in.
The World's Best Known Marketing Secret. That was the one that we read first. Before the Giver's Gain book was published.
Oh yeah, I remember when it was like, ooh, Giver's Gain.
Yeah, something new, right?
Yeah. Out at Member Success Program.
Yeah. So all of those things are really great resources for you to really figure out. And you know what is the best resource that some chapters never use? And I can speak from experience. When I was in a chapter that was, I can't even tell you what kind of chapter I joined when we started, and we became one of the best ones. And our secret was we got our manual, our leadership team manual, and we read it like 8 years into having the chapter, right? And everything changed for us. We're like, all right, why don't we try following the rules? We did everything else wrong, and then everything went right. So a little bit of structure goes a long way. It's fun to be a rebel, but it's not fun when you're not making money.
I always joke that I detest systems. I hate the rules and the rigidity. However, I like the results, so I deal with the fact that I may want to just do my own thing, but there's a tried and true way to do it. Let's just keep it easy and do it that way.
Yeah, I always feel like, it's rules and it's specific direction, but it's also something that's repetitive. It becomes routine. And then suddenly it's not such a bad thing. All right, well, we need to do a 7-month review for all our members. All right, well, let's do that because it's that time, So all of those things are important to just get into that habit of, and I think that this is something that's kind of stuck in my craw a few times when I have those debates with certain chapters. It's that, what's really important here is you cannot make decisions for people who are paying for their membership in an organization that's with a certain expectation.
Right.
You have to uphold all of those promises that we make as BNI to those members. And one of the things to do that is to give them exactly what they paid for.
Yes, love it. Now, I know we need to get back to the O&T, but first I do want to, we have Mr. Brad Boy, who is often watching. Thanks so much, Brad. He was in the spelling bee as a kid.
All right.
And he won. So
people like you. It's people like you, Brad, that make me do adult spelling bees.
And if y'all have more questions, comments, please put those in the chat. We are here discussing how to unlock our chapter success with the SWOT analysis. Steve talked a little bit about the S&W. Now it's time to kick into the OT, not like overtime, but the opportunities and threats.
Yeah. So opportunities. So one, we were talking about this earlier with that leadership team that is kind of, stuck in place forever. One of the opportunities might be, hey, why don't we get some brand new people on the leadership team, right? Or maybe an opportunity might be, why don't we reach out to different communities that are underserved in our chapter, right? We have, I was in a chapter in Framingham, Massachusetts, which has a huge group of Portuguese, and they have a language barrier, and they wouldn't join our group because they felt like they would be uncomfortable. But you know what? We brought in 3 people who started working in the trade sphere, and they were doing amazing work, and they started bringing in people, and the chapter started to grow and expand. More money, more opportunity, higher revenues, more referrals. We went from a 20-something chapter to a 58-member chapter in a few months.
That's awesome.
It was great. So that's one opportunity. Another opportunity might be, what's going on in our area? Is there something can we get a booth at a trade show? Can we do some sort of an event? What about an online event? You can do anything you like as a chapter, with an online event and invite people in. I heard someone started a Facebook group that was not a BNI group, but it was a town group. So they set a group for the town, and then people in their business were promoting their business naturally. And then someone said, hey, we want to start a BNI chapter, who's interested. And when they did that, they had 25 people in the first meeting. It was amazing. And so there's lots of opportunities. And for an existing chapter, you could do the same thing and just have a big visitors day and invite all those people from a town group.
Yeah.
So lots of different ways for you to look at what are the external opportunities out there that you can take part in. And then, of course, there are threats. So what are the threats that are going on? Well, a lot of people would point to competition. There's a lot of different networking groups out there. So how do you address something like that? Well, one thing that I found is there is strength in numbers. So I found that if you're in a BNI chapter that is kind of isolated and you're the only group for miles, talk to your director about opening sister chapters around you, so that BNI is like the only game in town or the best opportunity. Your own chapter will grow when there are chapters around you, by the way. So that's
I think that's interesting. I think sometimes people think more chapters means it's harder for us to get members, but it's actually the opposite. The more chapters, the more people that are talking about it, an amazing thing can happen. And it's interesting because Matt Wilkerson just made a comment. So hi, Mr. Nationwide, Matt Wilkerson, who used to be with Verizon. And I share the Verizon because what Verizon found is as they had stores, they actually cut their stores radius in half. And so they could have more stores than before. And people were like, oh, no, is that going to impact? This was like a big study. This isn't like just a local thing. Right. And they actually find that the more stores they had, the more business they got. And so I think BNI is the same way. The more chapters that you can have. I mean, if there's 200 people that live in a community, 5 chapters might be a bit much. But if there's 200,000 people, you can have several chapters and you're more likely to get more from them.
It's funny. Back in my director days, when we were opening chapters in Boston, we were opening a lot of them because we only had 7, which is ridiculous. There should be, 40. And someone said to me, I don't understand why you're opening chapters. You're making it so hard for us to get members. And what I said was, well, no, because first off, we're not looking for the people that you're looking for. for a chapter that's established. We're looking for the people who are already here that can't come in here. That's who we want, the financial advisor and the printer and all those people that are in pretty much every chapter. So it's important to really keep an open mind about these things and really look at, how we can get better by opening our minds a little bit and doing something a little bit different.
All right. So you mentioned threats of other networking. What could be some other threats to my chapter?
Yeah. I think a threat might be something like, and this is, that's kind of internal. That might be more of a weakness, but we do have to look at chapters that aren't moving in any way. They're kind of stagnant. Because what happens is if you're not getting a regular influx of visitors, and you're not converting those visitors to members, through natural attrition, you're still going to lose people, right? And so the chapter is going to be on a decline. And so it's really important to focus on making sure that you've got a steady stream of visitors. So in terms of threats to the chapter, I think you have to look at, can someone come in next door and just eat your lunch, right? And be the networking group. So I think you have to be open to all of those things and say, all right, how are we going to strengthen ourselves and get some PR out there for ourselves, right? Because sometimes if you're caught sleeping, someone's going to come in and, cause a problem. So I think you really just have to be really aware of those things that can really hurt your chapter down the road. And it can happen fairly quickly. I've seen chapters really stumble for a while before they kind of said, oh, wait a minute, we should have been paying attention to this, and bring it back and go back to the way that they need to be so they can be successful again.
That is so amazing. So any thoughts as we're beginning to wrap up this conversation here? We've got strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, engaging the leadership team. Anything else we need to keep in mind as we're unlocking our chapter success with the SWOT analysis?
Yeah, I think you have to, when you're going to come up with a longer list than what you need to act on by the time you're done with this. And I think there are some things that you can just kind of cross off the list as secondary or group them together so that it makes sense. Because when you're done with it, you really need to take what you've seen, what the analysis, and then create a plan that's going to work. So how are we going to make our strengths stronger? How are we going to eliminate our weakness, or take a weakness and turn it into a strength? All of those things need a specific plan. And this is why I think this is so important to do for your own business, but also for BNI, because you can really take a minute to say, all right, we're halfway through the year. We're a little bit more than half already. It's crazy. We're in July. How are we going to get to the end of the year and finish stronger than where we are now, in terms of revenue, referrals, visitors, all of those different things that we look at on the PALMS report.
Awesome. Well, Steve, we've greatly appreciated your time today to share this information with us. If people are looking to connect with you, how do they go about doing so?
Best place to find me is LinkedIn. I get a lot of Facebook stuff, but I don't really post that much on Facebook. So LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I'm also on Twitter. I just joined Threads. I'll see how that thing goes. Just checking it out. It's pretty good. But yeah, that was the best place. And I'm tomorrow morning, or maybe tonight, I'll be launching my new website.
Ooh, what's your new website?
It's same URL, Tannuzzo.com. I'll go from Tannuzzo Copywriting to Tannuzzo Creative.
Oh, so tell us a little bit about Tannuzzo Creative. What do you do when you're not wearing your BNI hat? What do you do on the creative side?
Yeah, so I've had this copywriting business since 2009. So this is my 14th year.
Wow.
And one of the things that I've done over time is, if you're a copywriter, you're going to understand SEO, and you're going to learn it, and because you need to work it into the writing that you do. But I was never certified in it. So I got certified at the end of last year. And I thought, you know what, I really should be offering this work, because people ask me and I always say no. And then I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't I just take that work? And so I learned it all. It's quite a science, and it can really change the way that your website works. And so I thought, well, let's do that. But I also do some consulting on the side for people, website analysis, things like that. So there's a lot of different things that I've done under the little umbrella of copywriting. And now it's more of, I don't want to call myself a marketing agency quite there, but we're kind of in between there. So I work great with small businesses who need help with their marketing.
So I have to ask, just because I'm having these conversations a lot lately with marketing folks, what is your thoughts on, is AI about to put you out of a job?
It's funny when ChatGPT came out at the end of, was it November of last year? It was the first question I asked. And I got the most diplomatic response from our friends at ChatGPT. They said, not at this time. Oh, okay. Thank you. And so the more that I learn about AI, what I learn is that AI is not going to put copywriters out of business. Copywriters are going to put themselves out of business if they don't understand the technology that's coming, or that's here, I should say. Because you have to, everything moves faster now. You can't say to someone now, I need 3 weeks to write your website. You just can't. It's got to be faster now. And with the help of AI, that can be done. But to me, AI is still a tool that needs a lot of tweaking to make the copy sound like your business, to make sure that everything that you're included in your website is going to work for you as your business. So it's a great start. It's an amazing idea generator. I love it, but you still need that that human touch, and that's what I do well.
Love it, love it. And I happen to agree with you. I think AI is meant to help us out. And well, actually, that will be for those of y'all watching. Our conversation next week is using AI to help with your BNI weekly presentation.
Nice.
Steve, it has been amazing to have you share with us how to unlock our chapter success. Is there any closing thoughts that you want to leave the viewing audience with?
Just talking about SWOT in general. It all starts with a strong leadership team. And so one thing you should be noticing, and when you talk about strengths and weaknesses, is how effective is my leadership team? And have your people be open to that kind of feedback, to say, all right, you know what? Maybe we do need to step up a little bit, because that's where everything changes, right? At the heart of the leadership team. If the leadership team believes it, the rest of the chapter will follow along.
Love it. Yes. And sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable when our leadership teams are trying to come up with something like that. So if you can ask for a nice feedback, if it's blind, but just because it's like blind feedback, make notes or use a Google form for anonymous things, doesn't mean to be mean with it. Yeah. But sometimes people can feel a little comfortable. So you can check that out.
One thing that I saw, by the way, was someone was using, they did a Zoom meeting and they did a poll. And so they had just a string of polls, and people were just clicking. No one knew who answered what, and they got their feedback.
Love it. Love it. Well, I want to say thanks so much for being here with us today, Steve. For y'all that are looking to create that more abundant entrepreneur lifestyle, do join us the third Tuesday of every month from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern time, where we have a show that has a feature for more money, more time, more fun. Steve joined us at the beginning of the summer with one of his segments. We always have some amazing things coming up, and we will be back live next Monday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern as we talk about how to use your AI for weekly presentations. Steve, thank you so very much for being here today, and we're going to have you back on soon to talk about some marketing on a Thursday afternoon.
That will be fun. Looking forward to it.
Happy networking, y'all.